They thought he was just another human, slow, soft, unprepared. So they threw him into a death trial with 3 of the galaxy's most feared predators. No backup, no way out. But what happened next stunned the entire academy. He didn't just survive, he turned the hunt around. And with nothing but instinct, grit, and a knife, he showed the universe what humans are really made of. This isn't a story about strength. It's a story about strategy, survival, and a species no one saw coming. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Jonas Marin wasn't anyone special, not at first glance. At the Universal Combat Institute, nestled across the moons of Verdanos 4, he was one of 100 new cadets. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, kept his head down during drills, and always finished his training quietly, somewhere in the middle of the rankings. The only thing that set him apart was his background. While most cadets boasted elite planetary education or military sponsorships, Jonas came from the quiet forests of Earth's North Territories. He grew up hiking, hunting with his grandfather, and navigating wild terrain with nothing but a compass and a backpack. Out here, though, that didn't matter. Or so he thought. The announcement came without warning. Just before midnight, the academy-wide intercom buzzed through the halls with a message that snapped every cadet awake. Cadet Jonas Marin of Dorm Unit 32. Report to Briefing Room 7. Immediate attendance required. Trial designation. Apex. The room fell silent. Even his 3 alien roommates, who normally didn't pay much attention to him, turned to stare. One of them, a lanky, blue-skinned creature named Bren, who communicated, mostly through scent trails, released a smell that translated to shock. The other 2, Torkin and Yulia, blinked in unison, their antennae twitching in surprise. That can't be right, Torkin muttered. The Apex trials are only for graduating seniors. Survival rates are below 60%. Jonas sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. Maybe it's a mistake. But they all knew it wasn't. The system didn't make mistakes like that. It was deliberate. Across campus, in a high-security observation room, Headmaster Quolo watched the dorm feed with unreadable expression. His crystalline body pulsed faintly in the dark, shifting colors in waves of thought. Beside him stood Trainer Helrix, an old insectoid war veteran with 6 medals and twice as many scars. "You really want to go through with this?" Helrix asked, his voice like sandpaper. "Yes," Quolo replied. "The Council has demanded proof. If humans are to be accepted as permanent candidates in the interspecies command structure, they must be tested properly." "You mean eliminated quietly?" Helrix replied, his antennae folding back. Quolo's body brightened momentarily in irritation. "The test is fair. He will face the same 3 apex predators every final cadet faces. Nothing more. If he survives, he earns his place." Helrix made a sound halfway between a click and a sigh. "He's not a trained killer. He's a kid who grew up in the woods." Quolo glanced at the screen. "Then we'll see what the woods have taught him." Back in the dorm, Jonas pulled on his uniform, still rumpled from a long day. His boots were muddy from terrain drills. His hands still marked with minor burns from a plasma knife exercise earlier that morning. He didn't rush. He didn't ask questions. He simply moved through his checklist with quiet focus. Boots, gloves, canteen, backup field knife. The only thing he did differently was slide a small leather pouch into his inside jacket pocket, something no one had seen before. As he headed for the door, Yulia called out, "Do you even know what you're walking into?" Jonas paused in the doorway and gave a half-smile. Probably. They watched him go in silence. The hallways were empty as Jonas made his way across campus. Outside, the moons of Verdanos 4 glowed in different colors, green, silver, and faint red, casting long shadows across the training fields. Everything felt too quiet, as if the academy itself was holding its breath. When he reached Briefing Room 7, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 3 high-ranking officials stood behind a glass panel. One of them, an older marine strategist named Varlin, looked uncomfortable. The others, including a silent observer wearing a council badge, seemed indifferent. A voice from the ceiling, calm, artificial, and cold, began the standard protocol. Cadet Jonas Marin, you have been selected for Apex trial evaluation. You will enter a controlled simulation dome designed to test survival against 3 high-tier predatory species from separate systems. No external assistance will be provided. Survival constitutes successful completion. Refusal to participate is considered grounds for immediate discharge. Jonas said nothing. Do you understand and accept these terms? He nodded. Yeah. A moment passed, as if the officials were waiting for something more. He offered nothing. Just that one simple word. Varlin leaned closer to the glass. This wasn't meant for someone like you, son. But now that you're in it, make sure they don't forget you. Jonas turned without responding and stepped through the side door that led toward the preparation chamber. He moved like someone going to another practice session, not into what many saw as a death sentence. Even the medical team stationed nearby whispered among themselves, wondering what Earth's quiet cadet could possibly do against galaxy-class hunters. In the final chamber, Jonas stood alone. The walls shimmered with soft blue light as the simulation began its startup sequence. Above him, the dome cameras tracked his every move. Behind the scenes, bets were already being placed. How long he would last, what would kill him first. Whether he'd scream. Jonas adjusted his gloves, rolled his shoulders once, and whispered to himself, just like the forest, stay low, stay quiet, strike first. Then the doors to the first arena began to open, and the galaxy began to watch. The doors slid open with a low groan, and Jonas stepped into the first arena. Instantly, a wave of humidity hit him like a wall. The air was thick and hot, filled with the scent of damp leaves and something rotten. The jungle dome was massive, its canopy stretching high above with beams of artificial light filtering through layers of hanging vines. Every surface dripped with moisture. This was not just a simulation. It felt alive. The moment he stepped onto the moss-covered ground, the dome sealed shut behind him. Jonas stood still for a few seconds, letting his eyes adjust to the green-tinted gloom. He didn't move quickly. There was no need to rush. The predator was already here, somewhere in the thick undergrowth, waiting. He could feel it. High above in the observation room, dozens of eyes watched. Senior cadets, instructors, council members, they all leaned forward as the hunt began. Most didn't believe he'd make it out. The betting pools reflected that. Some predicted he wouldn't last 2 minutes. Others gave him 5. Trainer Helrix stood off to one side, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. He's calm, he muttered. Calm or clueless, Headmaster Qualo replied. Either way, it ends the same. Down in the jungle, Jonas crouched beside a wide tree root and ran his fingers through the damp soil. He brought it up to his nose, smelling it. Then he smeared some across his arms and face. It was something his grandfather had taught him. When in the woods, smell like the woods. Make it harder to be tracked. He moved quietly, each step placed with care. No snapping twigs, no heavy footsteps. His breathing was slow and steady. Insects buzzed all around him, some the size of his fist. Bright-colored birds fluttered overhead, screeching and darting through the trees. But Jonas ignored them. He knew what he was looking for, or more accurately, what was looking for him. The shadow lurker. The training files called it a heat-seeking apex ambush predator. The cadets just called it a ghost. No one had ever recorded a clear image of one. Its skin reflected the environment, blending into trees, rocks, even water. It hunted by body heat and movement, striking without warning. Most cadets never saw it coming. Jonas reached a clearing with a shallow stream running through the middle. He crouched by the water, not to drink, but to check the surface. No ripples, no sign of movement. Still, something felt wrong. He stayed there for a long moment, eyes scanning the trees. Then suddenly, he stood and moved several steps to the right. A soft splash behind him. Without turning, Jonas pulled a small thermal pouch from his belt and tossed it toward the stream. It hit the water and hissed loudly, releasing a burst of heat into the air. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the water exploded. The shadow lurker erupted from the stream, its body a blur of color and shape. It snapped toward the thermal pouch, jaws wide. The heat source tricked it, and it attacked with full force, only to find nothing but boiling water and steam. It paused for a split second, confused. That was all Jonas needed. He charged. With his training blade in hand, he lunged at the creature's side. While most would run, he did the opposite. He got in close. The shadow lurker turned too slowly. Jonas slashed with the blade, cutting across a vulnerable spot just behind its forelimb. A shriek rang through the jungle. The predator twisted, trying to throw him off, but he ducked and rolled beneath its body. He stabbed upward. The blade sank deep, finding the soft muscle beneath its armored spine. The creature thrashed violently, throwing mud and leaves into the air. Jonas was knocked back, landing hard on his shoulder. He scrambled to his feet, not letting go of the blade. The predator wheezed once, then collapsed. Its skin shimmered, losing its camouflage and revealing dark, scaled flesh. The jungle was silent for a moment. No birds, no insects, nothing. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. In the observation room, no one spoke. Then someone let out a low gasp. Did he just kill it with a training blade? He used heat to trick it, another said, almost in disbelief. And then waited for the opening. Headmaster Qualo's body dimmed in color. Luck, he muttered. Trainer Helrich smiled, showing his sharp insect-like teeth. That wasn't luck, that was patience. Back in the dome, Jonas pulled the blade free and wiped it on the grass. He looked up at one of the cameras. Dirt smudged across his face, his uniform soaked. He raised a hand and gave a small wave. Then he turned, heading deeper into the jungle toward the exit point. As he walked, he passed beneath a massive root arch. Vines swayed gently in the air. He didn't look back. Above, someone in the observation room whispered, "One down." The dome began its shift. The environment shimmered and started to fade, preparing for the next biome. But for now, Jonas Marin walked alone, silent and focused, leaving behind only the body of a fallen predator, and the stunned silence of those who had doubted him. The jungle vanished in a shimmer of light. Warm green turned to dry gold. Jonas blinked as the landscape transformed around him, the air thickening with heat and dust. The transition was fast. 1 second he was walking through damp leaves and vines. The next he was standing in the middle of an enormous desert, the sky a hazy white, and the sun an artificial orb of burning light overhead. He squinted against the glare. The sand was soft and loose beneath his boots, already threatening to pull at his steps. The heat was sharp, dry, and relentless. This was the Corvaxian sand biome, home of the crash crawler. He remembered it from training files. A predator the size of a small transport vehicle, with a hardened shell and tunneling claws sharp enough to cut through steel. It hunted by vibration, using sensitive antennae beneath the sand to detect movement. It waited silently, buried deep, then struck with terrifying speed. Jonas stepped forward, slowly at first, then changed his path, veering away from the straight line that would lead to the exit beacon across the dunes. He moved in an uneven pattern, zigzagging, circling, pausing. To the untrained eye, it might look like confusion. To those watching from the observation deck, it raised questions. "Why is he not going toward the exit?" one of the faculty asked. "Because he knows what's waiting under that path," replied Trainer Helrich, who had stayed to watch. "He's not running from the danger. He's searching for it." Up in the control center, Headmaster Qualo watched the display with tight lips. The screen showed the heat signatures from beneath the sand. The crash crawler was already active. It had detected Jonas minutes ago and was closing in. But instead of running, the human appeared to be jumping. Jonas crouched low, then leapt into the air, landing with both feet hard on the sand. Then he did it again, and again. He began to hop in place, creating a rhythmic vibration. The pattern repeated, steady, consistent. To anyone watching, it looked ridiculous. Is he dancing? a cadet asked from the viewing platform. No, Helrix replied, his voice tinged with respect. He's baiting it. The crash crawler didn't think. It reacted. The vibration pattern Jonas created mimicked that of a native beetle species known to attract the creature. Jonas had studied this. In his spare time, while others played games or rested, he'd requested old biology files. Most had laughed. But now, in the scorching sun, the files paid off. Far beneath the sand, the predator moved faster, drawn to the pattern. It tunneled, upward, closing the distance quickly. Jonas stopped jumping. He stood perfectly still, blade in hand, eyes scanning the dunes. Then, without warning, the ground behind him burst open. Sand flew everywhere. The crash crawler exploded from the earth, towering over him, its shell glinting in the light, claws raised. But Jonas was already moving. He rolled to the side, avoiding the first strike. The creature hissed, its many legs adjusting as it tracked him. Jonas didn't run. He charged. The crowd watching gasped. Charging a tunnel predator was suicide, but Jonas moved low, fast, sliding beneath the arch of the creature's body. In one smooth motion, he thrust his blade upward into the soft undercarriage between its armored plates. The impact was clean. Sparks flew as the plasma edge cut into flesh and nerve. The crash crawler screeched, jerking backward, its body convulsing in pain. Jonas hit the sand and rolled again, avoiding the falling mass as the creature collapsed beside him. The entire attack had lasted less than 10 seconds. Silence fell across the arena. Jonas stood up slowly, brushing the sand off his arms. He wiped sweat from his forehead, then walked to a small rise and retrieved a curved piece of discarded metal. He had placed it there earlier, half buried. It was an old panel from a transport drone, polished and curved just enough to reflect heat. He had used it earlier to mislead the crawler's antennae away from his real position, letting it think he was standing somewhere else. He'd planned the whole thing. In the control center, betting screens flickered wildly. Cadets exchanged stunned glances. The odds had shifted again, and many who had bet against the human now watched in disbelief. 2 down, muttered Helrix, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. He's learning with each trial. Not just surviving, he's adapting. Headmaster Quolo remained silent, his body dim. His plan to discredit the humans was crumbling, one predator at a time. Back in the dome, Jonas looked into the nearest camera and gave a tired nod. He wasn't showing off. He was just letting them know. He was ready for the next challenge. His breathing was steady. His face was sunburned but calm. He picked up a small canteen from his belt and took a sip, then turned toward the far end of the arena, where the entrance to the final trial awaited. There was no cheering, no music, just the sound of wind blowing across the dunes and the image of one lone cadet walking across the sand, leaving the second predator behind. Somewhere, beneath the control tower, in the quietest part of the academy, the central database updated a file. Under Jonas Marin's record, 3 words had been added. Potential threat, high. As Jonas stepped through the final transition chamber, he braced himself for what was next. The warm air of the desert vanished instantly, replaced by a blast of freezing wind. Icy flakes stung his skin and the sharp scent of frost hit his nose. He blinked against the sudden whiteout. The world had turned to snow and silence. The biome had changed again. Now it was the frozen tundra of Harkle 5, home of the final challenge, the Frost Warden. The environment was cruel. Visibility dropped to a few meters. The ground was solid ice, jagged and uneven, coated in a thin layer of frost. The air was so cold that his breath turned to mist the moment he exhaled. His fingers numbed instantly, even through the gloves. Jonas pulled his jacket tighter and activated its thermal lining. It wouldn't help much, but it was something. Above, in the control room, all eyes were locked on the screens. This wasn't just a test anymore, it had become a spectacle. People who had never paid attention to human cadets before were now whispering about Jonas Marin. Some watched with curiosity, some with concern, and a few with fear. The faculty, once confident he would fail, now said little. The Frost Warden wasn't like the other predators. It didn't rely on brute strength or speed. It was intelligent. It stalked its prey with patience, setting traps, using the terrain, and waiting for the perfect moment. It didn't chase. It made its prey come to it. Jonas moved slowly through the snow, each step deliberate. His training blade was in his right hand, but it was his left that kept brushing against his jacket pocket, checking the contents of the small pouch inside. His face was red from the cold and his legs already ached from the uneven footing. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. The silence around him was too complete. Even the sound of his own steps felt wrong, too loud in a place where even the wind whispered. Somewhere out there, hidden in the swirling snow, the frost warden watched him. He paused near a cluster of ice formations and knelt to the ground. From his pocket, he pulled a tiny silver packet, tore it open, and shook it. The chemical hand warmer activated with a soft hiss, glowing faintly red. He tucked it inside his jacket collar, then stood again. "Is that a heating pack?" Someone in the observation room asked. Trainer Helrix nodded. "Human field tech, basic survival gear. But that wasn't issued for the trial," another instructor said. "It wasn't restricted either," Helrix replied calmly. "And he's not using it as a weapon. He's using it to keep functioning." On the screens, the Frost Warden's heat signature flickered through the storm. It was moving closer, using the ice mounds as cover, circling. It was fast, nearly silent, and far too clever to be caught off guard. Jonas didn't run. Instead, he pulled something else from his belt, a ration bar. He unwrapped it slowly and broke it in half. One piece he set on top of a nearby flat rock. The other he put back in his pocket. Then he walked away from the bait, taking up position about 10 meters off, kneeling down in the snow with both hands visible and no weapon drawn. "Is he feeding it?" someone asked. "No," Helrix said. "He's testing it." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, through the white mist, a dark shape emerged. The Frost Warden was huge, twice the size of a human, covered in thick fur and scaled armor. Its claws were long and curved, perfect for climbing ice. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, intelligent and calculating. It saw the bait. It saw Jonas. And it didn't take the bait. Instead, it circled him. One loop, then another. Jonas stayed perfectly still. The third time it lunged, but Jonas had been waiting. As the Frost Warden pounced, fangs bared and claws outstretched, Jonas dropped to one knee and drew a second blade from his boot, the same kind of plasma knife he'd used before, kept hidden the whole time. In one fluid motion, he drove it upward as the beast fell toward him. The blade pierced the warden's chest just beneath the rib armor. The impact knocked Jonas flat. The beast crashed into him with its full weight, burying both of them in a pile of snow and blood. The observation room went silent. On the screen, nothing moved. Then, after what felt like a full minute, the snow shifted. A hand emerged. Then Jonas pushed himself free, coughing and gasping, his face red with cold and effort. He staggered to his feet, covered in frost and the creature's blood. He retrieved both blades and looked up at the camera. 3, 4, 3, he said, voice hoarse. "Are we done here?" In the control room, no one spoke. Council agents watching from remote feeds took notes quietly. Some had already begun drafting new recommendations for human roles in interspecies defense training. Later, after medical checks and brief reports, Jonas sat alone in the cadet mess hall, sipping a hot drink that barely passed for tea. Round him, silence followed like a shadow. Some cadets stared, some whispered. His roommates approached hesitantly, unsure whether to celebrate or ask what came next. Jonas just smiled faintly and said, "Next time, maybe let me finish breakfast first." That night, across the academy and beyond, one idea spread faster than the storm itself. Not all predators have claws. Some carry quiet minds, steady hands, and the nerve to face monsters without flinching.